Good morning, everyone. It's always delightful to be at this conference and to see so many people who care about the things I care about. It's actually very humbling to follow Senator Van Hollen and Congresswoman Elfreth. They are honestly the most hardworking, most passionate legislators I know, and we are just so lucky to have them. So I was delighted to come after them and feel very, very humbled about that. They all stole my lines. They've all said the things I wanted to say. I could just sort of get off now and say, have a nice conference, but I won't do that. It was interesting to me that Heather and I have not spoken this morning, but she talked about children. And as I was driving here, and I'm going to rush through my slides, I'm not going to bore you this morning, but I did want to say this. Yesterday, just by happenstance, I was listening to the radio, and somebody was talking about homelessness and said the majority of people who are homeless in the United States are children. And I thought about that, and I thought, I think I've been telling my stories all wrong. Because I tend to talk about the families. Me and my agency, we work with families every day. We see the destruction that is caused by both the economy and the lack of affordable housing for families. But what I rarely talk about is the children in those families and what happens to those children. And unfortunately, on a daily basis, I get to witness that. A child who is homeless cannot do well at school. They are constantly moved because their parent or parents are often moving from hotel to hotel. Food is usually an issue, and we all know that hungry children can't learn. And then there's the shame of homelessness. Many of our children live in hotels. We don't have a good, accurate number of that. Many of them live in hotels and they move. They tend to move from hotel to hotel. Because of the McKinney-Vento Act, children get bused to their home school. It's a very kind thing that they don't want to move children, so they bus them. But for the children, they have the shame of being picked up at the hotel, so everybody on the bus knows they don't have a home. Homelessness is an ACE. It's an adverse childhood experience. Those children are already suffering from a whole set of economic and social issues, and then we add homelessness to that. For most families, it's temporary, but it tends to re-happen because they are families on the edge. And that's what I'm going to talk about this morning. But frankly, as a nation, that we can say that the majority of our homeless population is children, we really should be ashamed about that. And I hope that that drives everyone this morning, whether you're a developer, or someone who offers services as I do, and everyone in between. If you can't think of anything else, we really need to think about the kids, and they are the same kids that drag around their belongings in plastic bags from place to place in places that frankly no one should live in, that have roaches, that have bed bugs, because all of the hotels are not good places for anybody to live. So I'd like you to think about that as we go through this day. So you all know I write this needs assessment every 3 years. I want to make it clear to you, it's a snapshot, guys. It's just what I learn in a year of looking at data, so all of the secondary data, some of it good, some of it not so good, but also all the people I talk to. And this time I talked to 170 people, including some homeless families and their children. I had a fantastic focus group with Hispanic youth. I came away from that so humbled. I cannot tell you, their hope and optimism, given where we are, was quite astonishing. So about 180 people, everybody from the top of the tree in Anne Arundel County all the way down to people in public housing, basically just listening to them and what's going on in their lives, and then putting it all together with the data. And that's what makes up the 120-page report of Poverty Amidst Plenty, which you can get from the Community Foundation website or ours, Partnership for Children, Youth and Families. I'm just going to go through a few slides. This first one is around estimated annual income. You know I've talked about this loads. The problem with Anne Arundel County and many counties is that the gap between rich and poor continues to grow. Now, if you're rich, you probably think, well, It's not a problem. Well, it is a problem because economically, it really isn't good to have that sort of gap. It's much better if you have a more even spread of wealth. Because if you have an even spread of wealth, then people at all ends of the economy are spending money, which is what keeps our economy going, right? I mean, I don't need to be an economist. This stuff's simple. Unfortunately, we still have those above the 200,000 growing much more quickly than the ones at 25,000 and below. Imagine living in Anne Arundel County on $25,000. They are not going down so fast. So that shows you the gap. If you look at race and ethnicity, I always point these out. There is still a gap. There is a gap for African Americans and Hispanics. We continue to talk about that. That gap still exists. That's based on old historical systems and policies that have created that and that we all should be paying attention to. Poverty, it looks better. Do you know why it looks better? Because during the pandemic, we had loads of federal money and we actually decreased child poverty. So before you start waving flags and saying, oh, it's really good when we spend less, it's actually not at all. It's much better when we really understand what's causing the issues in our economy and we spend federal money to fix it. And we see child poverty is now going up again because all those federal funds have gone away. And again, you see the difference by race and ethnicity. African Americans far more likely to be in poverty. Hispanics, a growing number, far more likely to be in poverty. Those racial and ethnic issues continue. Let's talk about the Alice population, because we all should be really concerned about them. These are the people who are just at the threshold that every day they struggle to make it. They're juggling. They're figuring out, oh, should I pay this bill? Oh, that one's not due till then, so let me pay this bill. Shall I go to the food bank? If I go to the food bank, I don't have to spend that $250 at the grocery store. I can put that $250 to the rent. My staff and I talk to families about that all the time, and we tell them, don't pay that bill, pay this bill, because that will keep a roof over your head. These are the population that are at 70,000 and below. They struggle with housing, childcare, food, transportation, and healthcare, and they are also working, right? So these are the Alice population, coined by United Way. There are 230,000 of them in Anne Arundel County, and want you to think about that. Over a third of our population here in Anne Arundel County struggles to meet either their rent or their food bill or something else. That is a huge amount of people, and that's why we need affordable housing, and I include in that the cost of rent. Who's making the money? Well, people like me are making the money. Management is making the money. Those who are actually doing things that we really need to be done, transport, etc., they're around the 60,000, 50,000, and so on mark. This is a living wage calculator. I've followed this for years. It came out of MIT. It's very clever. No matter which county you live in the United States, you can put in all your data. It will tell you what you need to earn to live in any county. And you can see in 2019, that's really high actually. If you're a person with 2 children or 3 children, you need to earn, between $40 to $55 an hour. $40 to $55 an hour. Imagine if you're making minimum wage. Imagine if you're working 2 jobs at $20 each. You are still not making enough to live in Anne Arundel County. And then you look at 2024, and up it's gone. Now you need to make $73 an hour if you've got 3 children to live in Anne Arundel County. And you can look at all the different ways they cut it, by 1 child, by 2 child, by 2 parents working, etc. So this is all in the report. But the important thing to note is how much money you have to make and how far it is away from the $20 to $25 an hour that most people make and minimum wage, which is still around $15 an hour. Here's the median rent comparison. You can see in 2023, we were way ahead, around $1,900 a month you have to pay for a 2-bedroom, as opposed to $1,400, the average for the United States. That's actually gone up. We find it really hard now to find anything for a family that's below $2,400 a month. Imagine having to try to find that every month, two of you working, $20 an hour. It's really, really difficult. And these are the families that fall into debt, that fall into eviction, that are part of the 321 families that are just on our waiting list this morning to have us help them to find housing. If you see the rent as a percentage of household income, Senator Van Hollen already talked about this. We have a large amount of families who are rent overburdened. That means they spend more than 50% of their income on rent. And then what's left? For childcare, for food, for the electric bill that keeps going up and up and up. And then we look at people who own their own home. You know, it's much cheaper to own your own home than it is to pay rent. But first of all, you've got to get there. And here we look at the percent owning a home in Anne Arundel County, and you see the huge difference by race and ethnicity, specifically African Americans. Only 55% in 2023 owned their own home, and you'll see Hispanics around 60%. So we're still seeing those gaps. They are unhealthy gaps. They are based on old policies and old structural racism in this country, not just in this county. Homeless population, homeless numbers are terrible. I don't believe any of them. The only ones I believe really is the families I touch on a daily basis. And why is that? Because the HMIS system, which is the one that everybody relies on, it's a point-in-time count. People go out in January, count the homeless on the streets. These are only the homeless on the streets. All of the families that we serve, who are living in church basements, doubled up, moving around, in hotels, they are not part of this count. And so poor old Justin Beeler, who's a wonderful homeless coordinator here in Anne Arundel County, he runs the HMIS system. And every time I talk about it, I feel bad because that's all we've got. We've got the HMIS system. But you can see we've seen some heights and some lows. The chronic homeless population was really falling. And I think one of the problems about homelessness is that we all have a picture of what homelessness looks like. We think of the people who have been chronically homeless, who are single adults, often male, often with mental health issues. That has been coming down for years in the county. It just tipped up a bit this last year. But I will say the county's done a really good job. They've got outreach doing a really good job around that. The growth is in young adults and families. And that could be seen best by school system data, which is probably the best data we've got, and even that's not very good. Because the other problem is there's a whole set of families who don't want anybody to know that they're struggling with homelessness, so they don't turn up anywhere except with us. And just a quick thing about homeless families. So I guesstimate there's about 1,000 families homeless. I think that's an undercount by probably about 5. I would say it's probably around 5,000 homeless families now in the county, and then you multiply that even by 2 children, and you start realizing that then we're talking about maybe 10 or 12,000 homeless children in the county. And we never talk about this. We never add up the children. We never say for every homeless family, that could be 3 children, that could be 6 children. So how many children? And they're our next generation, and we are allowing them to live in this just extraordinarily unhealthy circumstance. So I talk to homeless families every day. My staff talk to homeless families every day. This is not getting any better. It is getting worse. We have never had a waiting list until last year. Never had a waiting list. We now have over 300 on a waiting list, and we have increased our case managers and our dollars, and we cannot meet the need. It's got to happen at the other end. There's got to be some movement around real affordable housing and rents that people can afford. These are just people on the housing voucher list and people on the public housing list in Anne Arundel County. You can imagine, guys, given the economy, right, there's going to be loads of people who are trying to find subsidized housing. So there were about 18,000 on the county list, and now there's about 23,000 on the county list, and they will sit there for at least 10 years because the housing list moves so slowly. In Annapolis, I think the list is still open. They often close them. It gets too busy. I think there's about 1,200 at the moment, so that's not getting any better either. Homeless youth is a real issue. Some of them are unaccompanied. They have no family, and they're trying to fend for themselves. They are often children who've aged out of our systems, like foster care, like juvenile services. They may be LGBTQ. That is an issue for children. They may have been thrown out of their homes because of that. They are often sex trafficked. We have at the moment, there is counted about 300 of them. I think that is a much bigger number than we actually know. And many of them are up in that Brooklyn Park corridor and round by the airport because we serve them, so we know them. They tend to be in the areas I'm going to talk about in a second. Quick thing on the social determinants of health. Let's just add to the issues here. Where you live will depend in this county and frankly across the country. Where you live depends on how healthy you will be, how happy you will be, how well fed you will be, what kind of environment you will live in, whether there's lead in the water at your school, whether there's a tree canopy that keeps you cool in the summer. All of those things depend on where you live. Right? So what's the data that really backs that up? Well, I had a long argument with one of our health officers about this, and we agreed in the end. The best data is life expectancy, right? Because that says everything. Well, if you live in Brooklyn Park, you have a 15-year less life expectancy than if you live in Arnold. So I really don't need to go through the rest of my slides because I think that sort of talks about it. But here's all of the maps that I've done over the last, I started this in 2009, looking at all of the issues, both geographically and by color, related to what we call the social determinants of health. And it doesn't matter what you look at. If you look at infant mortality, if you look at school readiness, I actually have a tree canopy map. Thank you to our planners for doing that. I have a lead in the water map, thanks actually to the school system for doing that. The number of emergency room visits, whether you have health insurance, and on and on and on. And I can map all of that and tell you that there are areas in this county where life expectancy, health, success in school, success in a job, etc. Internet access, I can map that. I can tell you that Brooklyn Park hits the bell for lack of internet access and lack of computers, even if you do have internet access. So it doesn't matter. Transportation is another. You see, I'm doing it. I said I wasn't doing it. Transportation. There are areas in our county where 2/3 of the people don't have a reliable car and have to get to work. And remember about that $70 an hour you have to make to be successful if you've got children in Anne Arundel County. The three big needs in the county have stayed unchanged since I started doing this in 2009. Transportation continues to be a problem. We have a very creative transportation director now who's doing some really neat things, including making all fares free, which I'm not sure even now people realize that the county have made all fares free. It's a really good deal for people who have no money, who are making $20 an hour and remember what they have to make and they've got an unreliable car. That's a big deal. And we've added routes, but there's still a long way to go. I don't know. Affordable housing, guys, this is the third one I've been at, and I know it's a national issue, but we have to dig in. I mean, Congresswoman Elfreth is exactly right. It is a great big stone pushed uphill, but it is not unsurmountable. And if you get fed up and tired like I do on a daily basis, think of the children, because it's just, we should be ashamed. We should be ashamed that we have children who are homeless, living in hotels, living in creaky basements. Came across a family who were living in a hardware store. There just happened to be a shower in this hardware store, and they'd figured it out, but they'd been there for 6 months by the time we'd found them. So I want you to think about things like that. Childcare, obviously, is the third one. It keeps going up. We don't have a good model. Reminder to everybody, we have a statewide childcare summit that grew out of our work in Anne Arundel County, that County Executive Pittman will be hosting on November the 3rd. It's virtual, it's off our website. So please, if you're interested at all in solutions for childcare, we've got some very heavy hitters coming to that, really talking about what can we do because we're bleeding childcare. So with that, I've probably talked too long, and Heather's probably about to get the stage hook and drag me off. And I hope I haven't depressed you all. What I hope I've done is gird you on like I'm girded on a daily basis, because in the end, we're all human beings. And what unites us, I believe, is our absolute commitment to making sure all of us are okay, and especially our children. So with that, thank you very much, and thanks for being here, and thanks for caring. Thanks very much.